in sports commentaries, scripting, shooting, directing, and much more. Take advantage of the course to develop your skills and capacities in sports coverage and reporting. Date 17th to 28th February 2020. Course fee 80,000 naira only, accommodation inclusive. Running concurrently is a special 4-week intensive course on record management and registry functions. Participants will be tutored on modern techniques of record keeping and registry management. Date 17th February to 13th March 2020. Course fee 100,000 naira only. Accommodation inclusive. Venue of both courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA TV College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos, Plateau State. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
And for our conversation this morning, we shall be looking at the proposed review of political office holders' emoluments by the Revenue, Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission.
All right, joining us to discuss this issue, we'd like to welcome Engineer Elias Mbam, who is Chairman, Revenue, Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. Chairman, pleasure to have you with us, and good morning, Nigeria.
My pleasure. Good morning.
Okay. Also here with us in the studios is distinguished Senator Ibrahim Hassan Hadejia. He represents Jigawa North Senatorial District. Senator, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Last but not the least, regular face on Good Morning Nigeria, Public Affairs Analyst Jide Ojo. Jide, pleasure to have you around.
Thanks for having me. Happy Monday.
All right, gentlemen, you're welcome to the show. And let's begin with Engineer Elias Mbam. What is the intent and purpose of the proposed review of the emoluments of political office holders in the country?
The purpose is basically to make sure that the remuneration of public officers conforms with the economic realities of the day. And when we talk of economic realities, we talk of, can government afford it? Is it affordable? Is it sustainable? What is inflation? What is the other economic variables that it helps to determine appropriate remuneration? So that's basically what we are doing.
All right, well, Mr. Chairman, when was the last review?
2007. That was the last review, which is known as Remuneration Act 2207. And that's exactly what the one we use now. But if you check at macroeconomic indices in 2007 and today, a lot has changed. So there's absolute need to review it. And if you read the dailies and listen to Nigeria, you know, everybody's clamoring for a review. So when you put all this together, you see there is absolute need for a review.
Now, under the most circumstance, how long does it take for a review to take place? Now you talked about 2007,
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what period is required, for this kind of review?
The law is silent on that. Probably in this review we may include the time frame, but presently the law is silent on it.
When you say that the macroeconomic indices have altered dramatically between 2007 and today, what are those indices that you're looking at, for instance?
I'm looking at inflation. I'm looking at GDP growth rate. I'm looking at market indices. I'm looking at available revenue for government. These are all, including exchange rate, because most of what we use also come from outside.
Okay, now let's turn to Senator Ibrahim Hassan Hadejia, Senator representing Jigawa North Senatorial District. What is your own view concerning this review? Is it necessary to do that? Because you, of course, directly concerned about it. And I would also like to share how your fellow honorable members are viewing this review.
Yeah, of course, I think it's necessary. The whole essence of having an agency like the Federal the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission is to ensure that these salaries and wages are in tune with economic realities. So we cannot just fix a fixed salary. We just reviewed the minimum wage for civil servants, and for the very same reasons that the chairman was expressing, which is the fact that everybody was clamoring for change based on the fact that economic realities are not in consonance with what people were getting. So a review is necessary. But like he said, there are various factors. And listening to him, I'm sure most Nigerians will be up in arms, because for everything he's saying, you cannot pick out whether a review is going up or down. We have to be very, very realistic. We have, apart from political office holders, apart from civil servants, it's a mixed balance between quality and quantity. You can move the minimum wage up, but like the chairman said, can we afford it as a country? Now, if you take that argument further, then we begin to look at the fact that if everybody is supposed to get a living wage, then maybe we begin to look at the total figure or the total number of civil servants and political office holders. You can't eat your cake and have it.
Jide? For me, incidentally, the week Honorable Chairman Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission issued that press statement. My column in the Punch newspaper of January 29 was dedicated to this issue. My own position is very simple. Even though it was very clear that it would not second guess whether the increase or review will be up or down, I was very definitive to say it's either you leave it the way it is or you bring it down. And I advanced reasons why I believe it should even come down. One of the reasons being that political office holders by themselves are not career civil servants. So they are not rookies who are just enlisted in public service, who are moving from one grade level to the other. People who comes into politics, like Honorable Distinguished Senator here, are already accomplished individuals. Many of them well-made, very wealthy. They are millionaires. I don't believe there is anybody in that National Assembly that is not a millionaire already. There is no pauper there, because when you consider what it takes to run elections, you know that a pauper cannot fit in. That's one. Two, it's also that if you have a snippet into what the asset declaration, open asset declaration form of few elected government officials who have obliged the public their asset regulation, you find out that, it corroborates my earlier standpoint that they are all millionaires and billionaires in their own right. Look at the Oyo State governor that declared 48 billion in assets last year. 48 billion. What do you want to increase? What it takes as salary or remuneration is not what he lives on. This is a young man of 52 who already has an asset worth 48 billion. Distinguished Senator Shehu Sani, as at the time he declared his asset in 2015, he said after election and all of that, at the inauguration it was worth 22 million. And that's outside of what he has expended on elections. He gave, even our former president, Shehu Masaya Adwa, who actually started this asset declaration issue way back in 2007. As of 2007, late President Umaru Musaya Adwa was worth 856 million naira. That's what he declared. So, or is it our current president, as at the time the president took office in 2015, in September when he made his asset declaration form open, it was worth about 30 million. That was even cash in the bank. Apart from the orchard farm, the properties he has houses in 5 places. He has landed property in Kano and Port Harcourt, which is undeveloped. These are assets. So when you say, oh, economic realities, okay, they are earning less than 1 million naira a month as a governor, or a president total emoluments in a year is not something very common. You are not supposed to look at that figure in isolation of the fact that these are people who are already well made, accomplished. They are there for service. They are not there for personal aggrandizement. If somebody was already a millionaire or a billionaire, incumbent governor of Ekiti State, in 2010, when he declared his asset, said he was worth 750 million naira and has landed houses in 4 countries. So in 2010, he has not become Minister of Solid Mineral. He hasn't won a second re-election into office, which he is serving now. So on what basis will you want to say, because of inflation, because of whatever, then you need to hike? I'm talking about hiking. I'm not saying that's the way it will go. But we cannot use the yardstick of civil servant who has no other means, or presumably do not have any other means to survive. They have to live 24/7. Distinguished senators now, by constitution, they are to sit for 6 months. The other 6 months, they do committee work, they go oversight and all of that. But 6 months is what the constitution says they are to sit. So it's not like, quote and unquote, 100% full-time job. And there are people, look at distinguished Senator David Mark, who had been a former military administrator, former Minister of Communication. Then he was in Senate up until 2015. It was only in 2019 he didn't contest. And on those 4 or 5 occasions, he won. So he was already a millionaire, if not a billionaire, by the time he's even exiting. And mark you, there is also this controversy that for governors and some elected public officials, even after retirement, they still have life pension. You know that issue is still pending, where some of them have been taken to court by Sarah to say, look, you cannot be enjoying life pension. Look at somebody like Chief Bike Amechi, our Honorable Minister of Transportation. For 8 years, he was Speaker of House of the Rivers State House of Assembly. For 8 years, he was governor. That's 16 years. Now, exiting governorship is now a minister, 2-time minister. So for those people, they are in government. Presumably, I'm arguing that they are in government for service, not for what to get. And when you look at even the current remuneration, what they get is not even that salary. There are other packages, including hazard allowance, Esther code, duty to personal.
Jide, yeah, thanks. We'll pause you in the meantime and return to you. Mr. Chairman, well, you see, Jide has ticked off the categories of persons whose emoluments are usually covered by your act. Who else is having his emoluments prescribed by your commission?
All political elected or appointed officials, from local government councillors, chairmen of council, state houses of assembly members, the political appointees at the state level and elected, and up to the president at the national level, and also the judicial officers, judges, chief judge, customary court. They are all determined by the commission.
Okay, what are the items in the emolument?
Well, we have basic. First of all, we have 2 major categories. The regular remuneration and the irregular ones. The regular ones are the ones you collect monthly, as the case is in Nigeria. You have the basic salary, you have the transport, you have domestic servants, you have PA, because right now the pay you with is consolidated. Your PA is supposed to be paid by you, and your driver is supposed to be paid by you. And we also have newspaper. But the irregular ones, you talked about Esther code when you are traveling. You talk about your leave allowance. You talk severance allowance, accommodation, furniture allowance, and vehicles, which is usually on loan, which you are meant to pay back before the expiration of your tenure. These are the basic allowances and remunerations.
Well, it appears to be comprehensive, from what you have just said. And, Nigerians are looking forward to having a well-articulated review of the emoluments of political office holders. And let's return to the senator here with us. Having heard from the chairman of the commission, what is your view concerning what members of the National Assembly are earning at the moment? Not just the salary, the regular salary, but other allowances, that tend to, of course, raise the bar when it comes to what you take home on monthly basis. And of course, the National Assembly has the major convergence of Nigerian politicians, who are really earning from the pulse of government. What is your thinking in terms of this review? Should it be up or downwards?
No, well, I don't have the variables that are available to the chairman. So I cannot second guess whether the proposed review should be going up and down. But having said that, these allowances that we're talking about, they're not take-home allowances. No senator or member takes them home. The allowances that are meant for running your constituency office, for your official engagements, for your traveling, and so on and so forth. And they are not too far away from what obtains for any legislator, especially for the kind of system that we have. We're about the only other country I can imagine that has the same setup as the United States, where you have a bicameral legislature in a presidential system of government. It's the same thing. When people make the position that, we're the highest paid legislators in the world and so on and so forth, I think you are comparing apples and oranges. It's absolutely not true. These are allowances that more or less is like an expense account, which you have to retire at the end of the day. You have to account for it, and to the satisfaction of the accounting people in the Senate. They are not take home, and coming back to what Jide was saying, I hope his position is not that, you have to be a millionaire before you run for public office. We can't all be David Mark or any of those individuals, because if we now toe that line, what happens today with a young man who just meets the minimum standards to contest an office, is elected by his people and he comes to the National Assembly? Maybe he cannot have the resources to meet up to the lifestyle or the standards that are being set. So, I don't think, we are looking at it from the proper perspective.
I asked that question, because there must have been a research to determine whether National Assembly in Nigeria is the highest paid globally. It's not something that is secret, to find out. But recall that I've said that a number of times on this program, when Kenyatta came to power in Kenya, the first thing that members of the National Assembly did is to collectively accept the reduction of their pay to help the government to run. They did it. So that's why I asked you this question, because you are directly concerned. And if it's okay, fine, the 13-point-something million that is paid to each and every one of you on a monthly basis, which of course you use to run your office, many Nigerians think it's quite huge. So that's why I had to ask you to know. I want to have a feeling of what your members are thinking in case the commission says we do a downward review.
Huge compared to what? And it's not, I know my salary, which is what the chairman can adjust. That is not a part of a senator's salary. And when you say, yes, the research has made, who made the research? In the United States, a senator earns between, or that expense account runs between $2 million to almost $4.2 million per annum, which is about $1.5 billion per senator. And there, it actually depends on the size of your constituency. And that's a place where everything works. Democracy is expensive. Maybe what we should be looking at is, really looking at, how to work on our economy so that everybody can have a bigger share of what is available. But when we isolate senators' allowances and have a fixation on it, what about that? We have 400,000 odd civil servants, that are taking almost 40% of the national budget, 0.2%. Can we begin to look at that? Can we begin to look at what happens by look at the executive side of government. How much does a minister, and when you take his salary, what about the other expenses that you know, must be met in the day-to-day running of a minister's office? Nobody is talking about that. Everybody just fixated on the allowances of the National Assembly, and I think it's rather unfortunate.
Yeah, the Senator, it's not necessarily an issue of fixation on the National Assembly. That's why we asked the chairman of the commission the categories of public officers who are affected by their mandated fixing of emoluments. And it says all political appointees, elected, all political office holders, appointed or elected, right from the local government right up to the federal. So everybody is included. That's why I want to come back before Jide, I will pause you in a minute. Let's return to the chairman. Some persons have argued that the devil is actually more in the details, that it is not so much to say, look, a political office holder has a monthly emolument of, say, 500,000 naira every month. But when you look at the range of allowances that officer is entitled to, then you begin to have some concern. For instance, I mean, so at the end of your service, at the end of your tenure, the person gets 300% severance package, which is calculated on the basic. It's 300% warranted under our current circumstance. And then when you also look at the travel allowances, those travel allowances were raised in 2007. It never used to be so. I'm sure you can reel up figures. If, say, you know, a special assistant or a senior special assistant is traveling on ESTA code, what is daily ESTA code allowance? I want you to have in mind, Mr. Chairman, what the federal government decided recently as part of cost-cutting measures. There was a directive from the Ministry of Finance that when officers of the federal government now are embarking on any trip, the travel dates are no longer calculated as part of the days for which you earn per diem. It must be the days that you are spending. They are in Addis Ababa now, for instance. If it takes, assume it doesn't take a full day, but one travel day go, one travel day come will not be excluded. But it is a package. Do we still need this kind of hefty package as daily ESTA code allowance for officials, right through from local government to the federal level?
Well, Kisla, I must tell you that you have started contributing to the review, because the purpose of the review is to look at each of these areas. And I must tell you that what is the commission's salary for these public officers is much, much different from what I read in the papers. I tell you, there is no senator, there is no minister that takes up to 1 million salary right now. Any other thing outside that is not known to the commission. And it's very clear. If you go to our website, you can go and see the details. The allowances are clear. But we are looking now at, even though it is as small as that, is it in consonance with the economic realities of today? You have mentioned severance allowance. Is that fair based on the economy of the day? And other allowances. That is basically why we want to do the review. And that is why I am reluctant to say it is go up or down. Because the process will determine the outcome. At the end of the process, it will come out.
Jide, you like to come in here. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the chairman is talking of economic realities, and this is the period that we need to make sacrifices. In reality, I understand the viewpoint expressed by distinguished senators. Not all fingers are not equal. But we have to look at the fact that politics should be about sacrifice. If you use politics as a means of personal aggrandizement, you will never get out of the wood. We are running a deficit budget in trillions. And as we see, the president is making conscious efforts to reduce running cost of governance. So if we don't start, the casualty may be more than if we all make sacrifices and reduce what we currently, for a political office holder. Look at what Senegal did. When they had issues in 2012, what did they do? They scrapped their Senate. I said, look, we are okay with unicameral legislature. We can save this money to take care of the emergency that we have, the disaster they had way back in 20. The same thing with Madagascar. Italy just announced last year that in the coming 2-3 years, they have reduced by 40% their Senate and House of Reps in Italy. And it's available. And these are conscious efforts. These are countries that we consider to be developed countries, who are, oftentimes referred as the first world. So if they are all making sacrifices, I've advanced an argument that, look, whatever you get as a political office holder is just an icing on the cake for you. Nobody gets, very few individuals will graduate from school and be lucky enough to be made PA or SA or SSA or whatever. So people already have a career. They have grown through the system. They have acquired property. Many of them are wealthy. And when you get appointed or elected into public, look at how much we even use in running elections in Nigeria. The law says, as a governorship candidate, you should not spend more than 200 million. But we know that what they use is in billions. And facts are there to back up. You are in a media organization. If you know what somebody will be running governorship election in Abia or Rivers and will be putting adverts on national TV. You know what a 1 minute jingle of adverts, and somebody will run that in the course of 90 days of campaign. And you think that person is spending just 200 million for his governorship election? That has not come. You have not factored in what he spends on rallies, what he spends youth wing, women wing, and all of that. So if somebody consciously knows that he's going to get less than ₦1 million his salary, and is ready to put in billions to run his election, then you must know that he has a means of recovering his expenditure. Look at, there is a news report yesterday in the papers of a southeastern governor who is under EFCC investigation. The man, for 8 years, when he was chief of staff, was, not personally collecting, but we were told the security vote
those are allegations by the EFCC.
That's why
EFCC,
allegation by EFCC. 500 million security votes. And the man served as governor for 8 years, 500 naira monthly security votes. Now compute that in 48 months. Now this same person is now a distinguished senator. When you look at 500 million monthly that you don't account for, you don't retire, so to speak. Those are the things that make people to want to kill, maim, and destroy in the bid to get to political office. So I'm saying that, look, we need to be very dispassionate about this. Let's look at the realities on ground. We cannot use inflation. We cannot use the fact that, the last time it was reviewed was in 2007, which was 13 years ago, and then make that as a case. I'm only talking hypothetically now. I'm not saying that the chairman has not told anybody that they are going to increase. But I'm saying that in order not to incur public wrath, people already believe that our political office holders are overfed, overpampered. They are enjoying on our behalf. Because if we can all make savings from whatever we have, and we are able to get more people off unemployment market, we are able to get more people off the poverty rank, we will survive collectively as a nation. But if we don't care for those, we don't have proper policy, and we want to make people who are already comfortable more comfortable, then we'll continue to have insecurity on our hands. And that's the appeal I'm making. I'm not saying that they are not justified. Even if I become a senator, I want to enjoy the perks of office. But all of us must make that collective sacrifice for the country to survive.
Okay, Jide, thanks. Carry on. I want to return very quickly to distinguished senator. This time again on the specifics. Earlier you were saying that oh, the allowances, just using the Senate, for instance, or members of the National Assembly, it could be a state house of assembly, it could be the legislature and the council or otherwise, that the allowances have to be accounted for. But let's face it, travel allowances are not accounted for. Extra code are not accounted for. Once there is a valid justification for a trip and the money is collected, the officer doesn't retire that money. And there is no accounting for severance package, which is 300% now of your basic. Why should we continue with these amounts that are assigned to these persons or to these officers?
You don't need to account for extra code. These are fixed allowances or severance package. What you need to account for is if there are expenses that you incur, which are not part of that. When you come back, you justify it, and you account for it. It's like the cost of running the office, overheads, running costs. That's really where the money is. When you look at it, you can't just, as a political office holder or as a civil servant, collect your salary and sit down in NTA. Somebody is paying for the electricity, somebody is paying for cleaning this place. And there are other expenses that, that might not come under the purview of the chairman or be under the scrutiny of the man in the street. But that is the reality of running government. And like I'm glad Jide made the point, democracy is expensive. When you talk of the cost of a governor's campaign, let's look at the cost of the election itself. INEC will present 100 billion naira bill to run an election every 4 years. They probably take maybe 25–30% of that on a yearly basis to do continuous voter exercise. These are the expenditure that comes with having a democracy. We need to make a choice. And we can't just simply say, oh, because it's expensive as a senator from Jigawa, let me stop coming to the Senate so that I can save government money. These are constitutional issues. No, you're right. These are constitutional issues. We're having a constitutional review. Let's listen to the argument. If we believe that the presidential system of government as it is too expensive for our structure, then let's look at it. It was a parliamentary system we had before. They said it was not representational enough. So we should go for the presidential system of government. We imported the American system, lock, stock, and barrel, dumped it on us. If we believe there's something wrong with it, let's look at it holistically. But now singling out and talking about allowances, what the whole gamut of the reduction that the chairman is going to do will not have more than a 5% impact on what we're talking about. That is the honest truth.
Have you worked out the maths?
I haven't worked out the maths, but I know, for example, he's talking of nobody is earning more than 1 million as political officer. What kind of expenditure does a busy minister incur if he is running around from Lagos to Port Harcourt to Enugu inspecting? These are the expenditures we're talking about. Overheads, running costs.
Honorable Distinguished Senator, take this along. But it should be fairly obvious. When we are grappling with, say, even at the national level, you find that challenge also at the state level, when we are striving to increase our allocation to capital projects versus recurrent expenditure. These items that we are talking about are those items that you find on the recurrent side.
Absolutely.
So if the struggle has been to say, look, let's ratchet it up from 30 to 40, how can we achieve that if the lopsidedness for recurrent that accommodates all of these issues do not get addressed?
That's why I said we should focus on our economy. Let's grow a bigger economy. Let's make it robust. Let's make it big enough for everybody. You understand what I'm saying? If we're talking about that, in some states, it's 75% recurrent. At the national level, it's creeping up to 40%. What are we going to do about it? And like I said, it's a question of quantity versus quality. We can't keep on talking about it. If we are just simply focusing on wages and salaries, then we need to look at the fact that if we increase the minimum wages now at 30,000 naira, some people are still arguing that it should be maybe 300,000. If you look at what is happening for nation, but can we support it? There are some things that nobody wants to talk about. Can we do with less than 400,000 civil servants? Can we do with unicameral legislature? All these are things that we should holistically look at. But it's not for us to sit down here and say, no, because we believe it's too expensive to run the Senate, we should just wake up and do like Senegal and say half of the members of the House of Reps should go home and rest. It doesn't happen that way.
Distinguished Senator, we're not putting you on the spot, actually, but you are the only politician here. So,
unfortunately.
So don't be surprised we are firing you right, left, and center. The idea is this. The nation is looking at a way to reduce the cost of governance.
Yeah.
Yes, it is constitutional to a level. We have a bicameral, legislative, system, right? And one of the newly elected senators, to be precise, Senator Okorocha, on the floor of the Senate, did say, look, that having looked around, having experienced a few weeks in the Senate, that there is no need for bicameral legislative arrangement in Nigeria. He said it is humongous. It is taking a whole chunk of huge sums of money. You are talking about building an economy. How can you build an economy when you don't have a good financial base to do that? When the financial base you have, is being depleted by way of paying emoluments, humongous emoluments. And again, your members display affluence, they display wealth. This level of this air of arrogance, in terms of the way you conduct yourselves in the streets and elsewhere. So it makes people believe, look, these people are taking more than required. And when Jide links that to insecurity, you may be surprised because some of you have up to 2, 3, 4 policemen with you all the time, even in your home village, and so on and so forth. So now, in your thinking, is it not better for us to now get your own sacrifice, the sacrifice from the political class, to see how the government can achieve this objective?
That's precisely what I'm saying. How do we effect this sacrifice that we're talking about? We can't effect it by rising on the floor of the Senate and saying that, no, I think we don't need a bicameral legislature. What Senator Richard should have done was put his position in writing and maybe submit it to a constitutional review, because these are constitutional issues. He went through an election, he beat several other people, came to the Senate. And you can't, this is the 9th Senate, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We can't just wake up and say, okay, enough is enough. Everybody go home, or let us be taking 10 senators a month to come and discuss bills. It's not as easy as that. I agree with most of the things you said. Like I said, democracy is expensive. We are running an expensive system of government. I don't know about the extravagance that is being associated with senators. Maybe you are towing Jide's line because most of them are millionaires. They all are flamboyant. I certainly am not flamboyant. I don't go around with it. I came back from my constituency yesterday, flew in around 10 p.m. because of whatever, took airport taxi to my house. So it's not, let's not generalize this thing. And even for those that are talking of policemen, and some of the expenses that come along with the terrain. You understand what I'm saying? As I am lucky, I can do that. A senator from another part of the country might not be able to go to his constituency without that arrangement.
Which arrangement?
The security arrangement that he's talking about.
That's what Nigerians are complaining about. And because they are having this private arrangement, you don't have cops again on the beat. Okay, well, distinguished Senator, thanks. I just want to come back to the chairman. Now, your commission, of course, again, to restate the obvious, is responsible for fixing the emoluments and entitlements of public officers, including political office holders, elected and appointed. What has been the attitude of the commission to what some persons now described as the embarrassing situation where governors had their state House of Assembly pass laws placing them on life pension with all kinds of perks attached to it? A house in the state capital, another house in Abuja. Medical allowance for the former governor and his family, including his wife and some number of persons. Number of cars to be replaced every 3 years or so. Number of aides, to go along with them. What has been, and yet your prescription is for a severance package 300%. I wish someone saying that, look, that even that figure is still too high. What has been the disposition of the commission to these humongous allowances? Not just state governors, you find council chairmen have also tried to do that. And some speakers of state Houses of Assembly have also tried to do that.
Well, thank you very much. Our commission is established by law. In particular, the Constitution of Nigeria. And we are guided by the law in our operation. What you just said is provided in the law. Section 83 and 1243 is the case for state. For federal is 83. So, 1245 provides that the State House of Assembly has power to fix pension for their former governors and other officials. So we cannot change that because it's a law. So if anybody feels otherwise, they should go and review the Constitution. They can't expect us to go after the governors because it's provided in the law. I think some are already in court, so let's see how the interpretation will go. But until that is done, the much we know is that this is in the law, section 1245 or so. So there's nothing we can do. But I want to use this opportunity to disagree with Jide. I don't agree that we should base our assessment, our determination for the remuneration on imaginary fixing of people's economic capacity. I can tell you very sure because I've been in this system. There are some ministers, when they were appointed, hadn't a serviceable vehicle. What do you do if you come here? If you now generalize it, it must be based on economic issues. It's not right for us to generalize. There are some, I agree, who are billionaires. But if you now generalize, it affects both the rich and the poor. So it's better we use international best practice in determining the remuneration.
What is international best practice in this?
What I've just said.
That namely, I
just said it.
International best practice, are the economies equal? I mean, against the background of what you said earlier, yes. That look, we have to be cognizant of our macroeconomic indices. Yes. We don't have uniform macroeconomic indices globally.
I mean, when you're determining their own, use their own. We are using our own here. If I'm doing it here, I'm comparing what was there in 2007 when it was determined, and what is the present state.
Okay, all right, Mr. Chairman and distinguished Senator and Jide Ojo. I mean, let's back up and then recognize part of what happened. That review took place. It started under former President Olusegun, yes. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo. Yes. And part of the rationalization, as was canvassed in the public space, was that it was intended to be an adjunct to the anti-corruption fight. You had the ICPC that was set up, you also had EFCC that was set up, and the argument was, fine, for you to ensure that political office holders, elected or appointed, don't then go raiding the public treasury, remunerate them sufficiently, so that they can look away from the public purse, face the chief concern of their public assignment, and proceed. I want to ask Jide, have we been able to realize that objective?
The answer is no. The answer is no, obviously, because it's not even in the remuneration that makes people to be contented. I quite understand the argument of my seniors here present. The issue is not about the few who are not well enough. It's about the majority who are living large already. I mean, I cited the example of our governor in Oyo State. 48 billion, the man openly admitted. I'm worth 48 billion. Now, how much do you want to give him on top of that will make meaning to him? Even if you take his salary to 5 million naira, this is a billionaire in dollars. He can still afford not to collect one dime. So what I'm saying, in essence, is not so much that there should be no safety net for those who may not be very wealthy, but who have found themselves in position of authority. The bottom line is about sacrifice. If we want to reduce the cost of governance, that sacrifice has to be made. I tell you today, if the chairman and his commission does not want to incur public bill, if they increase by even as little as 1 kobo on top of what the current political office holders are getting, they will incur public right. You will see, already NLC is talking. Many of the governors are not willing to pay 30,000 minimum wage. You know that it's already in public space. So if the people who are even creating the wealth for you are not well taken care of, 18,000 minimum wage, we knew that 27 states were not paying until the bailout of federal government came in. Now 30,000, many of them are foot dragging. There is a state, Taraba, that has not even begun negotiation with its workers. So what are we talking about? If you have not paid those ordinary civil servants who are earning peanuts, is it to now add to the wealth and comfort of people who, like I said, use billions of naira to run elections, and with the eyesight that they are going to recover? And they do recover. And the fact that, sir, as you have rightly pointed out, when you say, oh, give these people sufficient resources so that they will not steal, why do we have this huge number of public office holders still being chased after by the anti-corruption agencies? So you find out that there's the nexus between increase in wage and getting people off corruption inclination has not been fully established. People will still be corrupt whether they earn less or they earn more. It's about personal inclination. It's about proclivity to live decently, to live a contented life. Even if people who are billionaires, why should they steal? Why should they still be? Opus Odima came into office about 2-3 weeks ago, and what did he say? He said, look, I'm going to use the security votes of Imo State to pay salaries.
That's sacrifice.
That is sacrifice. So you cannot have a state, and I don't know how much that is. I've asked that question, how much, if Abia is collecting 500 million per month, then how much is Imo? Imo is all producing state, you will recover. So if and this is money they don't account for. We all know that they don't. So they may just buy 2-3 Hilux vehicles for police and say, we have done security. So these are sacrifices I'm saying. Let's not use, I'm using majority to advance my own argument. I'm not using the minority who may not be very comfortable.
Yeah. Jide, we thank you so much. You are speaking for the masses, you know, if I can understand you. Well, yes, of course, the focus actually is on, you know, revisiting the remunerations of political office holders. And of course, I believe at this point we have also done justice to that shortly before we conclude the program. Well, we're going to have a break now. When we get back, we'll, of course, visit the tweets that we have already here in the studio. So don't go away.
I'm Deputy Comptroller of Customs, Joseph Atta, the spokesman for the joint security exercise. Over a period of time, either through indifference or deliberate non-compliance to the ECOWAS protocol on transit of goods by our neighbors, the Nigeria Customs Service have been raising this issue. MOUs were signed severally. They were broken as soon as they were signed. We've seized over 32,050 kg bags of rice, and that is a huge impact. And then the fact that the coming in of this foreign rice have been completely shut down. We've gone around, we've received testimonies of farmers who, before now, found it difficult to sell one truck on a market day. These people say it now that those who could not sell one can now sell up to 20 trucks.
Why don't you people sell imported materials here? As beautiful as the shop is.
Buying foreign goods does not help our economy. Neither does it boost local production. And the good thing is Nigerian-made products are high quality. Really? And to make Nigeria great again. That is why I only sell made in Nigeria products. Because change begins with me.
I'm convinced. Change begins with me too. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We have a number of tweets that have come in, And Kira and I will go through those tweets now, then we'll return to our guests. Okpikumu Augustine tweets, a review of salaries and emoluments of political office holders in Nigeria should be a downward review, given our low economic strength. Anything short of this will be detrimental to achieving the next level agenda of the present administration.
Alhaji Musa Mohammed Hadejia said, even though the 774 council areas of Nigeria are striving to get some measure of autonomy, still many local government council salaries were augmented by the state government to be able to settle salaries, including Senator Ibrahim hometown. So there is a need to review downwards.
DJ FM, that's the Twitter handle. Upward review of the salaries is permissible if all the bloated allowances can be stopped.
Okay, now Chidi Amadi, political or public office is supposed to be for public good and not other reasons. We all know that for the public office holders, it should be a downward review.
Marvin Neo, that's the handle. It says, what is the total number of public and political office holders to the masses? Almost 1 to 99 in ratio, according to him. Now, what is the ratio of their pay to the people? Almost 45% by statistics. Who are they now serving? This doesn't look well, and it should be reviewed downwards.
Okay, let's go to Bashiru. Well, not only should their emoluments be reviewed downwards to save costs of governance, but another area where nobody is talking about is the outrageous salary emoluments collected by staff of many government agencies.
Yeah, that would be wages and salaries commission. That's the. It's not this one is for political office holders. Okay, now Law Alpha C, political office holders have held the country's economy in bondage for a long time. This is the time to make their emoluments unattractive so they won't scheme to win an election at all costs.
Ibrahim Modu Aji, emoluments, especially that of politicians in the National and State House of Assemblies, need to be reviewed downwards. The cost of governance is too high in this country. The Commission should urgently review it downwards, make it public, and should be constantly monitored.
Now, Paula Dejumo tweets, now thinking of reviewing the emoluments of office holders upwards will be an insult to the sensibilities of Nigerians. I wouldn't be surprised if it is reviewed upwards because Nigerians are considered too weak to fight for justice.
Delejak Solomon, it's only in Nigeria that people earn 300% of what others earn, and they have the same degree. There are employees in NNPC, FIRS, customs, and others with third-class degrees earning 300% more than the man with first class in the ministry. How can development take place, please?
Okay, now Titus Mondenok has this tweet. It says, too bad to see political office holders taking away tons of money while the common Nigerian worker is still battling with difficulty to meet the minimum wage. A really sad situation, and this large disparity on wages needs to be addressed to reflect current economic realities.
Chris Simeon, federal government should make a law that would give the Commission power to collect illegally earned remunerations from National Assembly members and send it to Federation account. However, jailed and sacked legislative members and governors shouldn't be collecting any entitlements.
Akeju Olagbaju, the review of salaries and emoluments of any categories of public office holders shouldn't be a public debate, but a responsibility of REMPAC in accordance with the guidelines and fully guided by the macro and economic environment.
Mike Anyako, review of salaries or emoluments of political public office holders upwards or downwards must be flexible depending on the economic realities on ground. There's nothing wrong with the condition. If the condition permits upward review of the emoluments, the concern is that previously it was done with reckless impunity, never imagined impolicy. Allowances were brazenly padded to the extent that even family pet dogs had shares. But if properly worked out, it's good development, and downward review also if the condition warrants it. This flexibility must be firm and patriotic.
Festus Akimboyewa, while the cost of politics and governance is not cheap, the huge amount of money paid to our political office holders is obscene, and a review is overdue. However, any review must be done in a way that's fair, ensures probity, accountability, and value for money.
Omobolaho, whatever reason as may be adduced by the Commission for such proposal, the time is absolutely wrong. There is no justification whatsoever for an increase in what accrues to political office holders, when today in Nigeria, the common man eats only 100 or 010, that's according to him.
Okay, those are the tweets that we can accommodate in the meantime. I want to return to the chairman of the Revenue Commission. Mr. Chairman, part of what we have also experienced is, on account, some would argue, of the attractive emoluments for political office holders, whether called special assistants, senior special assistants, special advisors, or otherwise, especially at the state level. There is virtually no cap on how many such political appointees that you can have. We have seen some states appointing an embarrassing number of persons known as special assistants, sometimes in their hundreds. And once your commission fixes the salary, then it becomes their entitlement. How then do we grapple with the knock-on effect that this is likely to have on the overall cost of governance and therefore our capacity to effectively manage and grow this economy?
Thank you very much. Your observation is very correct, and is one of the areas we tend to look at and probably peg the number that will benefit from the Remuneration Act. Of course, we don't have right to determine how many A's the governor appoints for himself. For you to benefit, we should be able to say this number of S's is entitled to the provisions of the Act. That is one of the areas we are going to consider.
Jide, might that help?
Yeah, it will to an extent, but I think we are just too ingenious in this country. We find a way, very creative way to circumvent the norm. People look at the legal loopholes to do all manner of shenanigans. The point which we must not lose sight of, and I think with your kind permission, I want to ask, because I get the feeling and insinuation that this review will have to be subjected to National Assembly approval at the end of the day. I think it's an inkling towards having a review that will be presented as a bill and then that will be approved by the National Assembly. If that is what...
No, let me clear that.
Okay.
The provision of the law is that any remuneration determined by the Commission for legislators from council to the national level is final. It will not undergo any legislative consideration or approval. But remuneration for the executive and the judiciary will be considered by the respective legislative assembly. But whatever they will come up to should not be more than what has been determined by the Commission.
Okay, right. That's fine.
No, if you could just state that again for the benefit
for
the benefit of our viewers.
I said one is that any remuneration determined by the Commission on behalf of the legislative houses or members of the whether state or national is final. It is not subjected to legislative approval. It's final. But remuneration determined by the Commission for executive and the judiciary will still undergo a consideration of the state and national assembly. But whatever they will finally come up to should not be more than what the Commission has determined.
Okay, understood. Let's return to the distinguished Senator Ibrahim Hassan Hadejia. If the review goes downwards, what reaction would you envisage from your members?
I can't predict the reaction of my members, but I can assure you, like I said, we keep missing the point. Whatever the chairman here is going to review is the salary that he says is known to him. That's not where the point is. When we talk about sacrifice, you find sometimes certain state levels, the governor will get up and say, out of my love for the people, I've sacrificed 20% of my salary or 50% together with my commissioners. Do the maths, calculate that amount, and compare it to the cost of running a government or the cost of running the offices or overheads. We shouldn't take these things in isolation. When we're only talking about basic, because like you said, my salary is about what, 750,000 naira. Whatever is going to review is going to be that 750,000 naira, or a minister's salary maybe up to about 1 million naira. The net savings that will come from any review would not be that significant. We have to look inwards. We have to look at the totality of the situation and say, how do we reduce the cost of running government? You know, issues like the pronouncement coming from the presidency, minimizing extra code days, defining certain classes of travel for ministers. When you add that, that is probably much, much more saving than you will get from any salary cutback or adjustment. The overhead that we use in running offices, you know, maintenance and so on, we pass the budget. We see these details. And we know what goes into the cost of running government. New cars every year and so on. So you talk about senators' cars, why are they buying cars? We are doing budget defense. A minister drives in, and the car that people are shouting senators shouldn't drive is the car that his security aides are using. We should begin to look at the totality of the situation. How do we reduce the cost of running government? That is where the major savings will come from. Not from salary reviewing. If he increases it by 10%, it's not going to make a dent in the recurrent portion of the budget. If he reduces it by 20%, it's not going to make a dent in the recurrent portion of the budget. We're running a recurrent percentage of close to 40%, you know, which is what, 5-6 trillion naira at the best, 21% left for capital project, and that recurrent is the one that will be implemented 100% when you look at budget performance, because that's where the salaries and the overheads are. So 98% achievement on 33% of the budget, and the rest is neither here nor there. Let's stop, you know, penny pinching and, you know, honestly scrutinizing this and look at it from a total perspective.
Yeah, distinguished Senator, I was just wondering, when the budgets of the MDAs come to the legislature, do lawmakers not have the responsibility of scrutinizing what is proposed? They want to buy vehicles. I mean, if a vehicle is proposed at a cost of, say, 30 million naira or 50 million naira, would they not specify the type of the vehicle? Can that not also be slashed, instead of allowing them to get the money and then they drive the car into the National Assembly, and then all lawmakers are looking and say, hey, you see them, and they don't want us to have our own vehicles? I cannot
tell you how many budget proposals were thrown back at MDAs to go and review, to go and give us details. But don't forget, this is my first time in the National Assembly, and we're running a very, very tight schedule. We promised ourselves the fact that we're going to give Nigerians a sanitized budget calendar. So we had very, very little time. We're working day and night. We sacrificed our holidays. But I can assure you, when it comes to the oversight, because it doesn't stop at the budget, we are going to ensure that these things are done properly. There's going to be savings even in the oversight functions. It doesn't stop at just passing the budget. We have to follow through and ensure that, yes, what you pass is what is being implemented. Jide said Nigerians can be very, very creative. They can look at loopholes. Civil servants are the most creative set of human beings on earth. They know how to go around these things.
They try to maneuver, you know, the law to get their things done. Chairman, when are we expecting this to be public? Because now I'm sure your men are working, your men are at work you know, as we speak. So when are we expecting to have the final you know, list of what we're going to do?
Mr. Chairman, let me piggyback on the question that Kieran asked. How does the Commission go about its work, particularly for the review that is proposed?
Well, I mentioned here that there are some economic variables we need to know to guide us. We also receive public opinion like Jide Ojo and what you are saying here. We make consultations with the National Assembly leadership, with the federal government, with the state government, the legislators, the civil societies. And we conduct public hearing. So initially, we soon advertise for invitation of memorandum, and I want you to send us one. So there will be invitation for memoranda, there will be public hearing, there will be consultations.
So what's the time frame?
Well, most likely, I don't want, because there are other variables we may not control ourselves. But all things being equal, we expect that before the end of the year, it should be out.
Yeah, Jide, what are your expectations with respect to this review?
My expectation basically is that whatever will be done at the end of the day will reflect the current economic realities of this country. We are technically out of doldrum economically. We are still running economic reform and growth plan. We know that our economy is still healing, and we are running a deficit budget. So all of these variables, these are my own macroeconomic variables I want to be taken into consideration. And the distinguished senator says something which is very instructive. What we need to also beam our satellite on is corruption in the system. Corruption is actually the major bane, irrespective of whether you reduce or increase. If people will live by what they rightfully is entitled to, we will not have this huge running cost. When people part budget, when they move things around in a creative way, I mean, we saw the audit report of Auditor General 2017, the indictment of many MDAs, non-compliance with audit provisions and all of that. Those are the kind of challenge that we face, because those are the ones that run into billions and trillions of naira unaccounted for, that is swept under the carpet. So I've always advanced this argument that, look, it's not so much, I mean, I know people in civil society who are more than $1 million a month, and there are quite many of them, if you work for internationals. So it's not so, but those people don't have anything outside of what they get. So, and there is no job security anyway. So if you are working for a USAID or UKAID or whatever, you get 1.2 million naira as a monthly emolument. You may lose your job in the necessary. Nobody will get 35 years working, because if these people fold up, they are gone. So that's on one leg. But if we are able to fight corruption to a standstill, and people are only allowed to take what is legitimately and they are entitled to, not all these other, because for instance, the legislature, distinguished senators now, by law, is supposed to have 11 heads, if I'm not mistaken. 5 working with you at the, that's what I read somewhere. 5 working with you at the National Assembly here in Abuja, 6 in your constituency office. That's what I learned is made provision for.
5 aides.
Just 5, both at home
whatever you take outside of that, you have to do at your own expense.
Okay, that means my information is incorrect. But so if you have a peg, I know of a governor from South who appointed 8,000 aides. 8,000. Because he wants to touch every family. How do you then account? These are people without offices, without even paraphernalia. They don't even have possibly letter of appointment, beyond the fact that their names were forwarded to a payroll and they get maybe 30,000, 50,000 every month. This should be discouraged. You cannot just have people, and we are talking of issues around what's it called? This one that brought me here the other time, between ASU and IPPIS. So how do you get those people on IPPIS if they are going to just get letter of appointment, no office, no working materials, and all they get is just... So I think we need to fight corruption. If we are able to deal with corruption in the system, upward or downward, it will still be comfortable for Nigeria to afford.
Okay, on that note, Jide Ojo, public affairs analyst and regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria, I would like to thank you for being part of our discussion.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Deep appreciation also to Senator Ibrahim Hassan Hadejia. He represents Jigawa North Senatorial District. Senator, thanks a lot for being around.
It's my pleasure.
And engineer Elias Mbam,